If you picture the story of Jesus, your mind probably jumps to starry nights, mangers, or philosophical sermons on a mountaintop. The Gospel of Mark skips all of that. There is no genealogy, no birth narrative. It opens cold on a grown man walking into the Jordan River to be baptized. Historians widely accept a concept called Markan priority. This means this specific text, written around 65 to 70 AD, is the original historical blueprint. The authors of Matthew and Luke literally kept a copy of Mark on their desks and used it to construct their own longer accounts. Mark circulated in the shadows of the Roman Empire, specifically tailored for a community enduring state-sponsored persecution under Emperor Nero. Because the audience was in crisis, the author wastes no time. The narrative pace is breathless. To keep the story rocketing forward, the text relies on the Greek adverb euthys, translated as immediately or at once, more than 40 times. The focus is squarely on action.
Instead of long theological lectures, we get a rapid-fire sequence of exorcisms, physical healings, and miracles, with desperate people constantly pressing through crowds to reach him. The breathless, action-heavy pace functioned as an urgent survival manual. A persecuted audience facing arrest and death needed immediate, concrete hope, delivered at the speed of a thriller. But right in the middle of this high-speed rescue operation, the protagonist does something baffling. A man is healed of a terrible disease, and immediately Jesus sternly orders him to keep his mouth shut. Scholars call this the messianic secret. Throughout the first half of the book, Jesus repeatedly commands demons, the people he cures, and even his own closest disciples to keep his true identity completely hidden from the public. Naturally, telling a crowd to ignore a miraculous healing has the opposite effect. The more forcefully he demands silence, the more enthusiastically the witnesses broadcast what they've seen. A moment of wonder. This creates a profound dramatic irony. Because of the very first sentence of the book, you, the reader, know exactly who Jesus is, yet every character inside the story remains entirely blind to his true purpose. The entire first half of this narrative is confined to the region around the Sea of Galilee. It is a localized, grueling campaign through rural fishing villages and constant, overwhelming public ministry. Here, he recruits his inner circle. He doesn't select scholars or priests. He picks common laborers pulling nets out of the water, telling them they will become fishers of men in an impending divine gathering. Yet Mark portrays these chosen 12 as remarkably obtuse. They bicker constantly about prestige. They panic during storms. They completely miss the point. The text sets up a sharp contrast between insiders and outsiders. The closest followers, the ones given private explanations, are spiritually deaf. Meanwhile, random, marginalized outsiders repeatedly demonstrate fierce, intuitive faith. Mark deliberately tears down the revered heroes of the early church to make a crucial point. Simply standing next to a miracle does not mean you understand the divine mission. The narrative splits clean down the middle at chapter 8. The setting moves into the harsh, rocky terrain of Caesarea Philippi. Here, Jesus asks his disciples who they think he is. Finally, someone gets it right. Peter looks at him and delivers a watershed confession, identifying Jesus not as a traveling prophet, but as the Christ. The moment those words are spoken, the entire book pivots. The rapid-fire miracle tour stops dead. The geographic focus locks onto a single fatal trajectory, a long march southward toward Jerusalem. Jesus immediately clarifies what it means to be the Christ. He tells them his mission is to be rejected, to suffer, and to die as a ransom for the many. Up to this point, the disciples and the original audience expected a victorious military conqueror to crush Rome. By redefining the Messiah as a willing victim, Mark upends every expectation of what victory actually looks like. The journey terminates in the hostile capital of Jerusalem. Almost immediately, the religious and political authorities lock in their plot to execute him. During his arrest and trial, the flawed disciples' arc reaches its bitter conclusion. The entire inner circle, including Peter, abandons him and flees into the night in absolute terror. The crucifixion is portrayed as a dark, isolated death. There is no divine rescue, only the violent tearing of the temple curtain as he dies alone. Then the ultimate narrative irony occurs. Standing at the foot of the cross, watching him die, is a Roman centurion, an agent of the very empire persecuting Mark's readers. This enemy soldier makes the first human confession in the entire book that Jesus is the Son of God. The messianic secret is finally lifted, but only at the cross. Mark is arguing that divine glory cannot be understood through miracles or power, but only through the lens of ultimate suffering. The story moves to Sunday morning. A group of women approach the tomb, find it empty, and receive a command from an angel. Go and tell the disciples that he is risen. But they don't. In Mark 16, the women flee the tomb, trembling and bewildered. They say nothing to anyone because they are afraid. If you look at the earliest ancient Greek manuscripts, the gospel ends abruptly on that exact note of fear. The 12 verses that follow in modern Bibles, detailing triumphant resurrection appearances, are absent. Later scribes appended them, attempting to smooth over a deeply uncomfortable cliffhanger. Leaving the story unresolved was a deliberate psychological trap.
By ending with terrified silence, the author forces the reader to step into the void. You are left to decide if you'll run in fear or take up the cross and finish the story yourself.